The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, January 28th. Everybody's having a good week, and we're going to be jumping into the news here momentarily. I just wanted to mention that I'm not sure when the next show is going to be, so I'm traveling tomorrow. Friday, I'm probably busy all day, but we'll see. Maybe we could squeeze in a show on Friday. That might be possible. Saturday, probably not. Sunday is probably the next viable show. I'll be on the road all of next week, not returning until the following Sunday. So shows next week, rest of this week, next week will be spotty. Spotty when I have availability and Wi-Fi and all of that fun stuff. So just a heads up. All right. Luckily, there's not much in the news, so no problem. If you're not updated, who knows what will happen in the next few weeks? It probably next few days, probably just quiet, probably just nothing, probably just no news. All right, let's jump in. We'll start with Iran. As I've told you already, the U.S. has basically the assets that it wants in place in the vicinity of Iran. It has an aircraft carrier group in the area. It has Air Force assets all over the Middle East set up. The one negative, and really you have to say a real failure of the Trump administration is really the fact that the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, of course, have all said that their airspace is off limits. They won't allow U.S. to launch attacks from their U.S. air bases in their territories, which is just a illustration of how weak Trump is. If Trump was strong and if Trump was assertive on the right kind of things, and if Trump was trusted and believed by allies, then why would they? Why if they thought that he would protect the oil fields, if they thought he would protect their oil installations, why would these countries object? Particularly UAE, which is an explicit enemy of Iran. Saudi Arabia, I suspect, is going through a transition right now. I think it's a little bit in financial trouble. It's invested a lot in these grand, big, amazing projects, building skyscrapers and new cities and all this other stuff, and trying to diversify away from oil. And most of that has failed financially. They were about to build the tallest building in the world in Riyadh, and that project has just been halted. And the company building it doesn't have the financing to do it. That's just one illustration. That long city that they were going to build, not happening. Way scaled down version is going to be built. Oil prices being quite low does not help the Saudis. Saudi Arabia is a massive welfare state that basically survives off of oil revenue, which is not helpful. And for whatever reason, I think MBS could be Trump. It could be economic weakness. He is moving away from kind of the liberalizing force in Saudi Arabia and is flirting again with Islamism. His alliance is now with Turkey and Pakistan. There's some flirtation with the Muslim Brotherhood, and maybe a return to Saudi Arabia being a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamism and Islamic terrorism. And again, all, I think, ultimately a failure of the United States' unwillingness to hold their feet to the fire and insist and, call them out and stop pretending that they're an ally. Trump is on the verge of selling them F-35s, which I think would be a massive mistake. Massive mistake. Why would you sell F-35s to a, quote, ally who refuses to let you use their airspace to take out a hostile nation. It makes no sense, unless you live in the, distorted world of Donald Trump. Anyway, the U.S. has the assets in the region. They can fly out of Jordan. They can fly from Europe. They can fly, from Diego Garcia, long range. They've got refueling tankers. They've got an aircraft carrier right there that can do a lot. Just that battle group can do a lot of damage to the Iranians. And they could always, if they wanted to, I doubt they will, they can always ask the Israelis to step in and help out. The Iranians are bracing for this. They're bracing for a possible attack. They have, they're deploying their navy, which is primarily smaller boats, but they're putting into place their plans for closing off the Hormuz Straits, which is this narrow place where all the traffic that flows from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, to the rest of the world, taking oil out and natural gas out, all of that, Qatar, all of that flows the Hormuz Straits, and of course the Iranians control one side of those straits and could block it. They have mines, they have suicide boats, they have missiles, they are, I think, preparing for something like that. The Iranian state is in a state of emergency, and is kind of getting itself ready, if you will, for war with the United States. At the same time, Witkoff is negotiating in the background. Trump tweeted today that they better come to the negotiating table, otherwise he's going to attack. There might be an ultimatum issued later today, 24-hour ultimatum for them. Trump's ultimatums. They're with the ink they're printed on, and of course there is no ink involved. So he will. Trump wants to negotiate, wants a deal. The deal is not going to be regime change, just like with Venezuela. The deal will involve nuclear and maybe missile technology, maybe, but it'll involve oil. Trump is also threatening the possibility of just blocking all Iranian exports of oil, just stopping the shipping like he did with Venezuela. He hasn't decided what to do. He doesn't have a plan. There is no strategy yet about what to do. What does they ask? What are they trying to do? This is why Israel keeps going hot and cold on an American offensive. They worry it'll be too little, and nothing will change, and it'll put Israel in a bad strategic position. They worry it'll only embolden the Iranians. So Israel is arguing for, if you're going to do it right, go all in. I don't think Trump is eager to do that. So again, a lot of tensions around that. Interestingly, I'm seeing reports out of Iran, and again, hard to confirm, hard to know exactly what is true, but there are reports coming out of Iran, and more than one, that Iranians are back out in the streets. That is, the demonstrations are continuing. And that is stunning to me, right? The courage they must have, knowing that this regime has killed, what was it, yesterday we said 37,000 people? Just slaughtered in the streets. That they are going back out there is pretty stunning. The regime, of course, the Iranian regime is blaming all the demonstrations on the Americans. And part of their justification for shooting everybody is these are just American agents. So very hard to tell. And again, with Iran, with Trump, you just don't know what he's going to do. I was going to suggest that maybe as part of distracting all of us from what is going on in Minnesota, which still is not resolved, and still a mess, and you're still seeing pretty bad pictures coming out of there, and still is not being diffused. with everything going on in Minnesota, it wouldn't be bad to start to, do something with Iran to kind of shift the focus, the national focus, away from that. But there are people within MAGA who hate the idea, who attack Trump on it, just like there are many people in MAGA who are very resentful of the idea of scaling back what is going on in Minneapolis. I mean, Trump is stuck. He would like to be more moderate on immigration, but MAGA doesn't want him to be. MAGA wants them all rounded up. And I'll just say this. I keep getting these people on Twitter saying, "Oh, it's just illegals," and then you ask them about H-1B and say, "Oh no, we don't want H-1B people, so that's legal." What about I say? What about the Indians? Those Indians, the rich Indians who are doing very well in the United States. They've made a lot of money and they're not on welfare and they're legal. What about them? Silence. They won't say, right? Because we know what they really think. MAGA's assault is on all immigrants. Don't let them get away with the pretense of, this is just illegal immigrants. Now, that's bad enough because these illegal immigrants are doing nothing to harm them. But all immigrants, and, as you know, that meme with 100 million people need to be deported, that would include not all immigrants, also all minorities, or all people, I don't know. Not good. Anyway, we'll keep watching. We keep watching what is going on in Iran. I mentioned the 37,000 figure. That is one source. Other sources are putting it at 5,400. Supposedly there's still investigations. It's 17,000 other claims. Nobody really knows. That's the reality. Nobody really knows, and we might never know how many people died in Iran. I mean, killed by this regime. The reality is that we still don't know, and we'll probably maybe never know, how many people were killed, for example, in Tiananmen Square. How many people did the Chinese government kill that day or that couple of days around Tiananmen Square? Not just in Tiananmen Square, but all over Chinese cities where students were demonstrated. We still don't know. So I am hoping, not that it has any impact, that something happened with Iran. The sooner the better, particularly when I think about if there are people out in the street, they need, they deserve support as quickly as possible. And look, let me just be clear about something. I do not believe the United States should attack Iran because there are people out in the streets. I do not believe the United States should attack Iran because the Iranian government killed 37,000 of its own citizens. At the end of the day, that is Iran's problem. Now, that would justify not having anything to do with Iran and all that, which I think already happens. We don't trade with Iran. I support attacking Iran because I believe and have believed for a very long time that the United States has been at war with Iran since 1979. I believe Iran constitutes a strategic military threat to the lives and property of Americans. I believe Iran, this regime, should be ended because it is in America's self-interest to end it. Because it is a regime that is hostile, aggressively hostile, a regime that has violated the individual rights of Americans. It's killed Americans. Now, the fact that we also get to help these amazing, brave, courageous people, Iranian people who are in the streets demonstrating, that is all gravy. But the meat and potatoes, the heart of it, the core, the reason to do it is that the Iranians are an Islamist regime that fuels Islamist terrorism against the United States. They're building missiles, ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, to threaten U.S. homeland, and they are developing a nuclear program, and they've killed Americans. And we should have done this decades ago, better late than never. And it would be amazing irony of all the presidents in American modern history, it will be Donald Trump that actually gets rid of this regime. That would be incredibly ironic. But I'll take it. I don't care who does it. I'll even give him credit for doing it. If he does it, if he actually lives up to it, if he does it. You said we were locked and loaded, Mr. President. You said we were coming to their aid. And even if Trump doesn't understand why he's doing it, even if he thinks he is aiding the protesters, I don't care, that's fine. Even if he thinks he's doing it to get a good deal on oil, that's fine too. I'm all for that. Do whatever you need to do to get rid of this regime. I mean, we have been arguing this since the 1980s, so it's time. Ayn Rand, pointed this out in after 1978, so it's time. Let's get it done. I'll be watching eagerly as I travel to see if it is done. If there is, I will try to get online to do a show about the attack on Iran when it happens. We will see what happens. Now, Iran is likely to attack Israel. If the United States attacks Iran, it will be interesting to see if Trump allows Israel to respond, or whether it forces Israel to stand down in spite of being just be on the defensive. But let's hope that he unleashes Israel and allows Israel to do its thing if it is attacked by the Iranians. Israel should do its thing anyway. And if Trump doesn't do it, Israel should do it. Somebody should do it. Suddenly, Iran is an existential threat to Israel. So it's in Israeli self-interest to take them out. All right. Let's see. Yeah, again, a story we've been following, and the reality is there's no big new news out there right now. So these are all stories we've been following, but there's just daily developments around these stories. Oh, I'll just mention this about Iran, which is kind of surprising, and then we'll go to the trade story. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has just said that the Iranian government's, quote, days are numbered. He said this in a press conference earlier today. And he said a regime that can only hold on to power through sheer violence and terror against its own population, its days are numbered. It could be a matter of weeks, but the regime has no legitimacy to govern the country. That is great to hear. Hopefully he knows something I don't in terms of something happening. I'll also note that while Germany and most European countries are interested in declaring the Islamic Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, France and Spain are preventing the EU from making that declaration. In particular, France is refusing to declare the Islamic Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization, which is stunning. Stunning. France, which has one of the biggest Islamist problems in Europe, has no balls. Just no courage. Spain, I get. They're a bunch of wacky leftists. But that France won't do this? I mean, France is somehow beholden to this Islamist regime in Iran in deep ways that go back to the 1979 revolution, where French intellectuals were huge supporters of the Ayatollah. But those were leftist intellectuals. I mean, Macron is not exactly a leftist. He's not a rightist either, but he's not a leftist, and he's not a postmodernist. It's just horrific. This is an easy call. They kill 37,000 of their own people. Yeah, they're a terrorist entity. Take them out. All right. So let's talk about, as we said, trade. A lot of things happening in the world right now with regard to trade, as the U.S. is clearly stepping away or stepping back from trade, using tariffs as a weapon wielded at the pleasure, at the whim, if you will, of the president. The rest of the world is slowly moving towards, in a sense, detachment from the U.S. and trade deals that kind of bypass the United States. Again, this has been happening since Trump's first administration with the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement, but it's now really accelerating. We talked about the trade deal that India struck with the EU, huge, one of those major free trade deals we've ever seen. Again, not completely free. I wish it was really free, but better than the status quo. The same with regard to the deal with the EU struck with the South American governments. Canada lowering tariffs to Chinese goods, and China lowering tariffs to certain Canadian goods. Canada now explicitly saying, we provide 98% of the oil and energy that we produce, we sell to one customer, the United States. We need to diversify that. And so Canada looking for customers for its oil and gas. In that context, Connie is going to India to try to cut a deal, a new energy deal with the Indians, right? And try to do as much as they can to pivot away from the United States. Again, Trump is unreliable. This government is unreliable. This is not a government pursuing American interest. It's, in a sense, the consequence of this is the opposite of American interest. It's hurting American interest. So it's going to be interesting. It looks like there will be a deal with India, and this is just a formality. Canada will supply India with LNG, LPG. I don't even know what LPG is. Anybody know? Liquefied something? I don't know what it is. Something gas, petroleum gas, natural gas. I don't know. And also crude oil to India. So that is in the works. So a lot of countries kind of trying to figure this out. In addition, the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is just arrived in Beijing with 60 top executives from major UK liquefied petroleum gas. Interesting. That's LPG. Keir Starmer is in Beijing with leaders of UK businesses in the hope of basically getting a deal with China. Again, the United States has raised tariffs on the UK, and it keeps threatening, and it keeps using tariffs as threats, example over Greenland. So let's cut a deal with somebody else. Let's cut a deal with China, a trade deal with China. So the UK is off trying to emulate the Canadians in terms of cutting deals and going around Trump. That is happening. Let me just see what else. So yeah, and I think you'll see a lot more of this. I think what Trump has managed to do is elevate the geopolitical position of China, and now elevate India, and really give a lifeline to Russia. He has, with all my other complaints about Trump, certainly one of the big ones from a geopolitical perspective is the fact that his behavior, his use of tariffs, his explicit attempts to antagonize our allies from Canada to Western Europe to India has basically emboldened our enemies. It's strengthened our enemies, and it's weakened the United States' geopolitical position in the world. We still have the mightiest military force on the planet. Everybody knows that. We still could pull off operations like Venezuela fairly easily. We still can do amazing things. And yet, the respect and willingness to work with us is dramatically in decline. dramatically in decline, and what it's caused is massive geopolitical angst. And I think the price of gold, at least to some extent, is a reflection of that. It's a reflection of Trump's instability and weakness. By the way, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Fico, this guy Fico, who is who is on the right and a fan of Orban's and a fan of Trump's and part of the kind of the part of Eastern Europe that is very much on the Trump bandwagon, if you win. Well, he supposedly he told a group of European leaders that he met recently with Donald Trump, that he was really, really worried coming out of that meeting about Trump's psychological state, that Trump was unhinged. This is from a friend, from an ally of Trump. But he looks unhinged, and his tweets unhinged, and he's getting worse, and there's something going on there, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's health-related, biological, and it'll be interesting if this White House, as Trump, if he becomes more demented, if this White House will behave any differently than the Biden White House did as Biden became incapacitated. Now, Trump is not incapacitated. It's just he's not there. He's not. He can't control his emotions. He can't control his state of mind, and he's out of control in that sense. And I don't think he can. Well, I'm not sure ever could, but I don't think he can think. I don't think he can think. Finally, on the trade issue, and this is immigration, relates to immigration. You know, not only is the United States backing away from trade with other countries, the United States is explicitly also backing away from immigration. That is, from accepting people from other countries to come to immigrate into the United States, including highly productive individuals, H-1B, for example, including the real talented individuals, geniuses and incredibly productive people. We are generally backing off, and our attitude generally towards foreigners and our attitude generally towards immigration is such that I think a lot of people are hesitant to come, even if they could. We also have a huge hostility, and this is going to not surprising, to low-skilled immigrants who we need in this country, actually need in this country, but who you can't even talk about bringing them in. So it's absolutely impossible to even think about bringing them in these days. Think about the hostility towards Indians. The hostility expressed by MAGA, starting with Mick Fuentes, but all through MAGA, you've got this massive hostility. It's what Vivek was speaking up against, and what Vivek was attacked about. I mean, even J.D. Vance's wife is being attacked. J.D. Vance is being attacked for having an Indian wife. And of course, many of the H-1B recipients are Indians. Well, it turns out that as part of the trade deal with India, the EU has also signed an immigration deal with India as part of what they call a broad strategic partnership. So this deal will encompass, for example, Indian students are set to receive longer multi-entry visas for extended post-study and work permits. So they'll come in as students, but then they'll also be allowed to stay in under limited time, but extended work permits, up to 3 years. And all of this will receive expedited, faster processing. Highly skilled workers and researchers will gain access to fast-track residency permits, easy family reunification, and smoother intercompany transfer routes. So they can come to the EU, get jobs, not be stuck in the one job that gave them the visa, be able to move around like some H-1B recipients are. Even seasonal and shortage occupation workers, including in agriculture and hospitality. They also be granted a number of different schemes to be able to come into the EU and participate in the labor force. Right. So there's gonna be a whole new office, European Legal Gateway Office in India, which is going to be a one-stop office designed to guide applicants straight into EU migration schemes before they even touch Europe. They're gonna, so basically, EU and India are going to have the work scheme that I suggested, right? If you can find a job in Europe, you're in. I think this is. I think this is terrific and really, really a positive move both for India and for the EU. The more the EU can bring in legal migrants and bring them in to work, not to go on welfare, I think the healthier the EU is going to be. And if they can bring in high-skilled people, researchers, entrepreneurs. Think about how many entrepreneurs there are in Silicon Valley. Consider the fact that the wealthiest ethnic group in America, to the extent there's an ethnic group, right? Or national group, make it national origin group. The wealthiest national origin group in America today are Indians. And that's because they're entrepreneurial. The ones who come, again, there's a self-selection bias. The people who come are not the same as the people who stay. The people who come to America are the ones that start businesses, work hard, and make money. And now many of those people, because it's going to be much simpler, much easier, and much more welcoming, are going to be going to the EU. That's a win for the EU, a loss for the United States, but one to be expected. So as the United States moves away from engagement with the rest of the world, other parts of the world will probably enter that gap and engage and pursue. Maybe here's a crazy thought. Won't happen, but what the hell, right? Imagine as the United States backs away from capitalism, some places around the world embrace it. As the United States increases regulation, increases taxation, increases debt, which is basically a form of taxation. Other parts of the world reduce their debt, reduce government spending, reduce regulations. Wouldn't that be crazy? Again, the German Chancellor, who's turning out to be pretty good, German Chancellor Merz, said, I think at the same news conference, he said, Germany and Europe have wasted years of economic growth due to stalled reforms and excessive regulation. He said the EU has become the world's leading champion of over-regulation. Well, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time. Maybe something will budge in Europe. Maybe something will change. Certainly, things have changed in Germany. This was not the talk in Germany even last year. Merz is turning out to be much better than what he seemed before he was elected. And, we will see. We will see if it's not just talk, if it actually turns to action. If it turns to action, that would be amazing. See, Rafael, thank you for the sticker, Rafael. I got your email. I'll get back to you. I need to ask the relevant people about what you asked about the conference, but I will get back to you about the conference in the next few days. All right. That's that. Yeah, let's talk about the dollar. Wasn't that. All right. So a lot of stories out there about the dollar's decline, and the dollar's getting cheap. The dollar's declined. Does Trump really want a soft dollar? What's his name? Secretary Bessent was asked about this, and he said, "No, we want a strong dollar." They should not acting like they want a strong dollar. The dollar's been in decline. But so before we talk about it, I first wanted to put it in perspective. I know there's something nobody else does out there, because there's a lot, and I've seen even on my chat, and even among a lot of the people who are inclined towards commenting on economics on the chat, there's a lot of like, the dollar's finished, the dollar's crumbling, the dollar's collapsing, the dollar's going down in value. And if you only look at the dollar versus gold, yeah, it looks like the way. But nobody buys anything with gold. And why do you need dollars? What's the purpose of dollars? The purpose of dollars is to buy stuff. Money is there to be to use in consumption and in investment. So, purchasing power of the dollar is captured by measures of price inflation, and we could debate which price inflation measure is the right one, but they all show price inflation in the United States around 3%, which is not good, but not end of the world-ish either. The other sense in which we use dollars to buy stuff is we use dollars to buy foreign goods. We use dollars to import stuff, and other people use dollars to buy our stuff. So the dollar is measured. When people say the dollar is getting weaker, what they mean really is it's getting weaker relative to other currencies. It was getting significantly stronger, for example, last week. I mean, really strong relative to the Japanese yen. And it appears that the Japanese government has entered and tried to manipulate it. And the U.S. has said that it might strengthen the dollar relative to the yen. Weaken the dollar relative to the yen because it was getting completely imbalanced. Now, I don't know if any of that makes sense, but the reality is the last few days, the yen has been gaining power versus the dollars. The dollar is going down relative to other currencies. But how bad? How bad is the dollar going down relative to other currencies? It sounds catastrophic from what everybody is saying. It sounds catastrophic. It sounds like the dollar's collapsing. So here's a chart of the dollar measured against a broad index of other currencies. So this is basically nominal broad US dollar index, which the Federal Reserve publishes. Now, you could say this is government numbers, you don't believe it, fine, don't believe it. I believe it. It's basically a basket of other currencies measured against the dollar on a daily basis. And this is going back to the mid-2000s, to the early 2000s. I wish I had it going back to the 1990s, because it would be interesting to see what it looks like when you take it back all the way to the 1990s, or actually the 80s, because in the 1980s, in 1985, the Reagan administration decided that the dollar was too strong, and they actively worked to weaken it, and the dollar lost a huge amount of value relative to other currencies between 1985 and 1987. And then on one day in October in 1987, during the weekend, the Treasury Secretary went on TV and expressed the opinion that the dollar was still too valuable and it should be weakened. And the following Monday, the stock market dropped 25% in one day. Black Monday was the consequence of, in those days, the weakening of the dollar. But anyway, let's look at it today. This graph is standardized on, I think, 2005. So 2005 is at 100, and everything fluctuates relative to that. And you can see that the dollar today, standing at, according to this index, 119.2855, is quite a bit down from its all-time high in January of 2025, just before Trump was sworn in, at 129. So it's down quite a bit from the 129 to 119, but it's still like 19% stronger than it was in 2000 and I think that's 5. Much more than that, stronger than it was during the financial crisis or during the aftermath of the financial crisis in 2011, 2012. It's basically come back down to the levels it was from during 2023 and much of 2024, some of 2024. It's still much higher than when it was in 2021, and it's still higher. It's higher than when it was in Trump's first term. So the dollar is not weak versus other currencies. It's actually very strong. It's just not as strong as it was a few months ago, a year ago. But as compared to Trump's first term, as compared to 2018, 2019, it's a lot stronger. So there is absolutely nothing in the data, in actual data, that suggests that people are crazily selling U.S. government bonds. If they were, interest rates would be spiking right now, and they're not. They're higher than you would expect them, but that's because I think people fear inflation, and they fear what Trump will do if the Fed, if he forces the Fed to flood the economy with money to get the economy hot is the term they use, before the midterms. So they're worried about artificially spiking the U.S. economy with inflation before the midterms. So interest rates are a little high, but they're nowhere near as high as people are dumping the dollar. They're selling the dollar like crazy. Relative to the euro and relative to the yen and relative to the British pound, yeah, I mean, it's the dollar's not as strong as it was, but it's not collapsing. The only currency that the dollar is at a record weakness to is the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc is viewed as the ultimate safe haven. The problem with the Swiss francs is there are not a lot of them. So when people start buying them up, their value goes up very, very quickly. When demand goes up and the supply is limited, the Swiss franc is very volatile in that sense. It goes up very, very quickly. So yes, the dollar's weaker. And my view is that Trump would like to see the dollar be much weaker. I wouldn't be surprised if within a year, we're on this index, we're at 110. We're closer to where it was during Trump's first term. And the reason why Trump would like the dollar to be weaker is a weak dollar encourages exports and discourages imports. And since Trump believes that trade deficits are bad, inherently bad, increasing exports and decreasing imports will close the trade deficit a little bit. Tariffs, all else held constant, actually increase the value of the currency relative to other currencies. I can, if you really want me to know why that is, I can walk you through it. But that is the reality that tariffs typically increase. They haven't this last year because of everything else, because of the geopolitical risk involved in holding dollars, just the way Trump is behaving. Not everything else was held constant. Not everything else was held constant. All right, just wanted to give you this. I like to just remind people that panic is unnecessary. Now, it could be that people who are buying, selling foreign currency don't know what they're doing, and only the people buying and selling gold know what they're doing, right? That is possible. Only gold is the only indication of rationality in the economy. Gold is the only signal you should monitor. It's a signal that says, and what gold is saying right now is, the risk of geopolitical collapse, of American collapse, of the dollar collapse is super high. It's through the roof. No other market is signaling that, but the gold market and silver market, I guess the commodity markets are signaling that. It's signaling the collapse of the dollar and the United States going into hyperinflation. So it's suggesting that we're about to enter a period of hyperinflation. Again, no other market suggests that, but it's quite possible that gold market is the only, quote, rational market, and all the other markets are acting irrationally. Or it's possible that all the other markets are rational and gold is irrational. And it's also possible they're all irrational. What is not possible is that they're all rational. I don't know if you got that. Real inflation, that is printing tons of money. And what happens when you get real inflation? Ultimately, prices go up. Otherwise, it wasn't real inflation. If you increase the money supply, then first you get malinvestment. And maybe you get a bubble in the stock market, or you get a bubble in something. But then ultimately, all those dollars don't disappear because they were invested somewhere. They are still circulating in the economy. And ultimately, it might take a few years, it might take 2-3 years, but ultimately, prices go up. There's no way to actually, and the Austrians don't claim this, there's no way to actually engage in monetary inflation without the result ultimately being, I won't call it price inflation because geekonomics will go nuts, ultimately being prices going up, the price level going up. Because by investing in the stock market, money doesn't go away, it doesn't disappear. The money that the Fed printed, let's say it all goes straight into the stock market. Stock prices go up. But what does it mean it goes into the stock market? It means somebody bought stocks. But for every person who bought a stock, somebody sold. So somebody gains those dollars and reintroduces them somewhere else into the economy. There's been massive malinvestment in the last 50 years. And there's been inflation over the last 50 years. But there has not been hyperinflation over the last 50 years. Government spending is not printing money. Government spending is not monetary inflation. It's just not. Government spending can be neutral in terms of monetary, right? You could raise bonds. You could just sell bonds. Selling bonds is destructive in other ways to the economy, but it's not in and of itself inflation, right? Government spending is not inflation. What's inflation is the creation of money. That requires the Fed to buy government bonds, which is a different process. Right? And the money creation creates malinvestment, which flows into inflation. And it's why over the last 50 years, since 1971, we've had inflation. We just have not had, with the exception of a few years in the 70s, hyperinflation. Because the reality is we haven't had monetary inflation at the levels that would result in hyperinflation in the sense of hyper increases in prices. The price level has gone up. It hasn't gone up at the pace that gold suggests it's going to. It hasn't gone up at the pace that most Austrian economists expected it to go up. It just hasn't. Because all Austrian economists know that malinvestment is the first level of how inflation realizes itself in the economy. But the much bigger level, the ultimate level, is prices go up. If you don't have an increase in prices, you didn't have inflation. I mean, it takes time, granted. And by the way, I'm curious, Geekonomics, if you could list all the malinvestments that have happened, because it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see how, even exposed, whether you can identify malinvestment. Malinvestment is easy to say, it's easy to argue, it's easy to claim, but where is it exactly? What has been the malinvestment? I can think of a few, but where has it been in the last 15 years? All right, the dollar going down. The world is not ending. Bicycle lanes are not malinvestment. That's not what the Austrian economists mean by malinvestment. God, sorry, it's just not. Any government spending like that is stupid. It's bad investment. It's not inflation-driven malinvestment. All right. I need to get back to this. QE was not malinvestment. There's no investment going on in QE. It's not a wise investment. It's a bad investment. It's just not what's used in economics. When you say malinvestment, that means something. Bicycle lanes is not what's thought of as malinvestment. I'm not going to do a lesson now in Austrian theory of inflation and how the money filters into the economy and where it goes. But that is not what is meant by malinvestment. You have to think about you have to read up what Mises and the Austrian business cycle people say is malinvestment. It's not bad investment. There are lots of bad investments that have nothing to do with monetary policy. Malinvestment is a feature of bad monetary policy. And that's something very different. Anyway, gold hit 5,300 the last couple of days. 5,300. I mean, it's up 22% since the beginning of the year. 22%. You tell me that something fundamental in the economy has changed over the last month, justifying a 22% increase in gold. That's all I'm going to say, and we'll see what happens. All right. Quickly on Ukraine. Ukraine's in and out of the news constantly. And we keep expecting any day now Trump to announce a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, of course. There was an expectation just a few days ago, I was reading about it, that the Trump administration would sign a deal with Ukraine that would provide U.S. security guarantees. And now it turns out, unsurprising at all, that the United States is backing out of that and saying that they will only supply security guarantees to Ukraine, contingent on the Ukrainians agreeing to a peace deal that involves the ceding of significant amounts of Ukrainian land, including the entire Donbas region, to Russia. Basically, the Trump administration, as it always does, has reverted back to supporting whatever Russia wants, backing Russia up. Again, if Ukraine agrees to withdraw from the Donbas, the United States, not just to give up on the stuff that Russia's already occupied, but give them more of the Donbas, the stuff they haven't occupied, then the United States will give them even more weapons, as if the Ukrainians should believe any of that. Again, Ukraine hoped to sign a document, security guarantees, and a post-war prosperity plan with the United States as early as this month, but it's not happening. And the United States continues to put pressure on Zelensky, put more and more and more pressure on Zelensky to fold. The United States is becoming more and more explicitly pro-Russia. Again, it all changes, right? Trump meets with Zelensky, is nice to him. Everything leans towards Ukraine. And then he talks to Putin on the phone. And then, oh, no, Russia's all right. And he completely shifts towards Russia. At the end of the day, his real allegiance is to the Russian. It's to Putin. It's not to Ukraine. The United States it believes that Ukraine must give the Donbas for the war to end. And it's doing nothing, very little, to pressure Putin to abandon any of his demands. It's a completely one-sided deal. It really is horrific. It's really disgusting. At the same time, Russia's not doing well in the war. It's an unbelievably grinding war. There have been almost no advances for the Russians. The data is showing that Russia's paying an unbelievable price for very, very small gains and basically is in decline as a world power. Russia's probably suffered 1.2 million casualties since February 2022. More losses than any major power in any war since World War II. At current rates, the combined Russian and Ukrainian casualties would reach 2 million by the spring of 2026. This war has been going on for nearly 4 years. If you think about the war between Russia and Nazi Germany, by year 4, the Russians were already in Berlin. And yet, the Russians cannot get even close to Kiev. Right now, Russian forces have advanced at an average rate of between 15 to 70 meters a day. Since 2024, when they launched and advanced. That's slower than almost any major offensive campaign in any war in the last century, last 100 years. I mean, this is very similar to trench warfare in World War I. It's going nowhere. Going nowhere. And at the same time, its war economy is under huge strain. Manufacturing is declining. Economic growth is now at 0.6%, which is a distortion anyway, because that captures GDP, which includes government spending. If you just look at standard of living, quality of life, they have declined dramatically. No global competitive technology firms. There's nothing. There's no technological innovation other than in jamming the technological innovations that the Ukrainians are making. So the only technological innovations are maybe in drone and anti-drone electronic warfare. So Russia is in deep trouble. And instead of leveraging the trouble Russia's in, instead of leveraging that fact in order to get Russia to back off of its demands, Trump is taking their side, and all the pressure is being applied to Ukraine. It really is, what was the word before somebody used? Disgusting. It really is disgusting. All right, before we go on, just a reminder that this show is supported by listeners like you. Without your support, couldn't do the show. And that support manifests itself during live shows in Super Chats. It's also a way for you to determine the content of the show, because you ask questions and I get to answer them, and you can take the show in any direction you want. You can ask about whatever you want. So just let me make the pitch. Please use the Super Chat feature to ask questions. Please use it to support the show. Please use the sticker feature to trade with me, value for value. Again, these shows would not exist without the Super Chat, without the stickers, without this financial support. I have monthly goals and show goals, and we need to do better than we're doing right now. And this might be the last show of the month. Might be the last show of the month. So it is also relevant for the monthly goals that we are doing. So please consider supporting the show with a sticker or a question. Roland says he's sharing some of the strength of the Swiss franc with me. Thank you, Roland. I have noticed that your Swiss francs in the Super Chat are worth more over the last few months. They've just more and more. Unfortunately, I don't have any francs. I wish I had some Swiss francs. I wish I had more gold and I had lots of Swiss francs. That's what would be cool. All right. This is an interesting story I came across today, and it comes from a lawsuit that was filed by publishers against Anthropic in early 2024. This was a lawsuit that was filed last year and was settled last year, but the judge has released all the documents, all the findings from the lawsuit and made them public, which gives us a insight into what these AI companies are doing. Anyway, according to this Washington Post story, in early 2024, executives at Anthropic ramped up an ambitious project they sought to keep quiet. It was called Project Panama. It was their effort to scan all the books in the world. Scan all the books in the world. This is from an internal planning document that was released as a consequence of this trial, where Anthropic landed up paying, $1.5 billion to settle the case last year. It turns out that they spent millions of dollars buying books, breaking them up, right, taking out page by page, and scanning them, so that the AI could learn from the authors. This lawsuit is part of a wave of lawsuits brought against AI companies by authors, artists, photographers, news outlets. Basically these AI agents are scanning everything we have, and including material that is protected by IP, and uploading it. Now, they're not reproducing it qua book, but they're reproducing, in a sense, the knowledge in the book in what the AI will tell you. And you can actually ask an AI about a particular book, and it will summarize it to you. And you go, how does it know that? Because it's bought all the books and read all the books on Amazon. Books are particularly important for Anthropic. According to Anthropic co-founder, the training AI models on books would teach them, teaching my quotation marks, how to write well, instead of mimicking low-quality internet speak. A 2024 email inside Meta described accessing digital troves of books as essential to being competitive against AI rivals. And they didn't see it as practical to get direct permission for publishers and authors to use their work. That tells you a lot, right? They could have got electronic files, but they didn't want to pay for that. They didn't want to get permission. Instead, Anthropic, Meta, and other companies found ways to acquire books in bulk without the author's knowledge and uploading pirated copies. They bought legitimate copies, but they uploaded. It says on several occasions, Meta employees raised concerns in internal messages that downloading a collection of millions of books without permission would violate copyright law. In December 2023, an internal email said the practice had been approved after escalation to MZ, i.e. Mark Zuckerberg, according to filing in a copyright lawsuit brought by book authors against the company. Meta has declined to comment, of course, for this story. In one newly released legal filing, Anthropic disclosed that co-founder Ben Mann personally downloaded a haul of fiction and nonfiction from a shadow library of books and other copyright infringing content called LibGen over an 11-day stretch in June 2021. Later, again, they literally bought books and scanned them. They claim that they didn't use the books that they downloaded from LibGen for commercial AI models. I guess they just used it for, I'm not sure what they did, right? Anyway, this is, it's interesting. It's interesting. We're learning now how these projects actually came to be. Companies can still get in trouble. In Anthropic's case, the book scanning project passed muster, but the judge found that the company may have infringed on authors' copyrights when it downloaded millions of pirated books free before launching Project Panama. So it seems like the courts are, saying that within a right to use books for training AI models because they process the material in a transformative way. The judge likened the AI training process to training school children to write well. The same month, District Judge Vance Chibrea found that the Meta case that the book authors had failed to show that the company's AI models could harm sales of their books. So, an interesting case in terms of, how this works, the conflict between the two. I guess partially it's what the books are used to train AI for, writing well versus actual content. But it is interesting. I don't have a strong view about this. The ultimate number of books scanned and they cost are redacted in the documents, but a project proposal by a vendor that ultimately worked with Anthropic noted the AI company was seeking an experienced document scanning service vendor to convert from 500,000 to 2 million books over a 6-month period. That's a lot of books. I hope they did it with mine. I hope my books were used to train AI. I mean, if they'd asked my permission, I would have said, yes, go for it, please. All right, I want to end with what I think is an important point made in a dispatch, the dispatch publication, in a dispatch publication today. This was published today. And this is an editorial by the board of editors, I guess, the dispatch editors. So it represents the dispatch's opinion beyond any particular person. The title of this is The Cost of Silence. And underneath it, it says, enough. Now, I don't agree with everything written here, but I agree with the spirit. They write, as we end the month of 2026, the governing spirit of the United States is not populism. It is neither right-wing nor left-wing ideology. It is most certainly not the political order spelled out in the Constitution. Absolutely. It is chaos. The Trump administration has had an extraordinary few weeks, dragging the American people along for the ride. Federal agents have, as of this writing, shot dead 2 American citizens within weeks of each other in the same city, while clad in masks and military gear and carrying out a campaign of paramilitary-style immigration enforcement that appears far more interested in theatrics than deportations. In both cases, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security has rushed to label these shooting victims, and by extension, other ordinary Americans protesting immigration and custom enforcement tactics, terrorists. In recent days, we've seen high-ranking administration officials try to retroactively justify the agents' actions by advancing arguments that infringe upon America's First and Second Amendment rights. Elsewhere in the world, the NATO countries dispatched troops to Greenland in response to fears, far from unreasonable, that the United States was weighing an act of war against Denmark as part of a campaign of old-fashioned imperial expansion. The Canadian Prime Minister announced the end of his country's long-standing partnership with the United States. Quote, "We're in the midst of a rupture, not a transition," unquote, and has taken steps to strengthen ties with China, India, and the European Union, both harmed by U.S. tariffs. Announced the mother of all deals as a defense measure against the United States and China. Gold and silver prices are regularly hitting record highs, and the financing costs of the U.S. government, ever-expanding national debt, are continuing to rise. The United States has now entered its 6th consecutive year of persistent high inflation, and while pandemic-related economic forces and excessive federal spending first signed into law by his Democratic predecessor can account for much of that, President Trump's stubborn clinging to misguided tariff policies is not helping matters. Neither is his administration's transparently pretextual criminal investigation of Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell as part of the president's efforts to bully the Fed into lowering interest rates in the run-up to the midterms. One of the ironies, they say, repeated throughout world political history, is that autocrats rarely bring order that they are elected or installed to deliver. Even the servile kind that can be imposed through state terror. No, more reliably, autocrats bring disorder, the disorder under which Americans are now suffering, the ramification of which have only just begun to be realized, is that inevitably happens when an American president disregards the rule of law, insisting that he's limited only by his own sense of morality, and sense of morality that is, in this case, does not quite seem to exist. That is pretty brutal. All right. They go on and on about this, and you know, going after Trump, and I think all legitimate, maybe not big enough. But that's not the essence of what they're writing. They do summarize what they say this way, but we will repeat ourselves nonetheless. Donald Trump is uniquely unqualified for the office of the presidency. Himself a man with no sense of integrity or administrative acumen, and one who is lazy, vain, ignorant, and vulnerable to flattery, all of which make him easy to manipulate for figures such as Stephen Miller, whose ethno-nationalist obsession and sophomoric Nietzschean posturing have dominated the administration's agenda for months, and who is emblematic of the type of advisors with whom the president has surrounded himself this second go-round. My only criticism of them is their sentences are too long. They really need to learn how to write shorter sentences. But I agree with them completely. Again, this is from the Dispatch. By the way, the Dispatch considers itself a conservative publication. A conservative publication. These are the never-Trump conservatives writing this. And they go on to say, but Trump is far from the only at fault for the mess in which we find ourselves. And then they go after Biden, and they talk about Biden. But that's like two sentences. This is, I think, where it gets important. And when the history of our time is written, congressional leaders, particularly Republican congressional leaders, will be remembered as more important and much more culpable than it seems at this moment. Describing their careers as inaction would be too charitable. They have been enablers, not only of particular crimes of the Trump administration, but of the more general aggrandizement of the presidency and the subordination of the entire legislative branch, the branch created by Article 1 of the Constitution to make laws and exercise outright oversight of federal agencies. They are, in a very real sense, in gross violation of their oaths of office, and so too are the representatives and senators of both parties who have contributed over the years to the reduction of Congress to its current miserable state. It was inevitable that the void left by Congress's abandonment of its constitutional duties would be filled by the energies and fantasies and fundamental incompetence of a man once accurately described by J.D. Vance as plainly unfit for the office to which he has twice been elected by the American people. This is really good stuff. There are other aggravating factors as well, including the emergence of a digital culture that has degraded political journalism from an important check on those in power into clickbait, fan service, and conspiracy theory nonsense. And he goes on and on and on and on. The catalog of the administration's wrongdoings is so substantial as to feel endless. Not impossible to keep track of, but not many people are in a position to dedicate their lives to the project. I try on this show and still can't keep track. American citizens illegally detained by ICE agents, the gross corruption on the part of the president and his circle, launching a war in Venezuela without congressional authorization, after carrying out a likely illegal campaign of extrajudicial massacres at sea, refusing for months to enforce the law banning TikTok. The pace of outrage and abuses is part of the White House strategy. You'll have forgotten about Trump's promise to end the Russian-Ukraine war on his first day in office by the time you've journeyed through Minneapolis and, Caracas and Tehran and Nuuk. Nuuk is the capital of Greenland. Here we will take the unusual step of directly addressing Senator John Thune, the majority leader in the Senate, who we believe understands the difference between merely being the Senate majority leader and acting like the Senate majority leader. Whatever his admirable personal qualities, Thune has thus far failed to perform the role he is supposed to play in our constitutional order. If Trump is to be constrained, and the need only grows more dire by the day, it is Congress that will constrain him. Senate Republicans, having a majority that is at the moment expected to survive the midterms, have a special role to play in that. And Thune, as their leader, has an opportunity to begin charting the long path towards the kind of politics and governance that so many elected Republicans privately wish for when the cameras are off. And so we ask Senator Thune, if you cannot act in the face of this, all this, why do you choose to remain in the Senate at all? Now, 250 years into this great experiment in self-government, we firmly believe there is still a much greater appetite for sanity, civility, and decency in this country than social media and cable news would indicate. But even if we're wrong, we return to the Dispatch's founding document, which has, quote, and this is absolutely true, and I completely support this. Failure in a good cause is better than triumph in a bad one. Dante put his cowards and opportunists, those who refuse to take a stand in life, in the vestibule of his inferno. It isn't hell proper, but you can see the rest of the underworld from there. The cowards and opportunists in the United States in 2026 stand at the precipice too, and have brought our country to the verge of something awful and unspeakable. We got here one step at a time. Let's hope that we remember the way back. Good for the Dispatch editors. It's a good statement. It could be even better, but it's a good statement. I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take any allies I can get at this point, given the state of the country. These are insiders. These are people who know the players. They might have some influence. I don't know. Probably not. We're in. This is not a good place for America. This is not a good place for America to be. All right, I'm going to make another appeal to you guys to ask questions. We're way under on Super Chats. I'll also note that yesterday and today, the entire support of the Super Chat has been dominated by Michael, who is, as always, incredibly generous. Somebody else has to step in here and help him out a little bit. I don't think he can or wants to do it all himself. And he shouldn't have to do it all himself. So if you gain value from the show, if you find the show interesting, entertaining, valuable, stimulating, whatever, you listen to it, then please consider financially supporting the show. Again, you can do it a variety of different ways. Well, one way, if you're here live right now, is to come in with a Super Chat or sticker in support of what we're doing and in support of this. And it could be that a lot of you, some of you, and maybe I should take it this way, are listening but don't really like it, or listening or pissed off at me because of my position on Trump or on immigration or something like that. I'm not sure what you're doing here, if that's really the case fully. But I hope that's not true. I hope there are people out there that are benefiting and valuing what I do. So make it show. Make it happen. Trade. Win-win relationships. All right. The alternative is, of course, if you're listening after the fact, which most of you are, a vast majority of you are not here live, then please consider joining me on Patreon or on PayPal, supporting the show on Patreon or PayPal. You can go to patreon.com, put in Yaron Brook Show, and sign up for monthly contribution. I think on PayPal, it's Brook Media. You look for Brook Media, but I think you'll find it looking under the Yaron Brook Show and become a monthly supporter on PayPal. Either way, monthly support is incredibly valuable. I will add that we have sponsors. Alex Epstein is the world's authority on energy. And what's going on right now in the Trump administration with regard to energy? Trump and Alex really knows. I'm hoping to get him on the show maybe in March to talk about that. But you can keep track of all the happenings when it comes to energy in our world by subscribing to Alex's Substack, alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com. Hendershotwealth.com/YBS, Hendershot with 2 T's. You can check out my interview with Robert Hendershot on my YouTube channel under playlists, for the sponsors playlist. Robert is always interesting. It's always fun. You should listen to it anyway. But particularly those of you who might be selling a business or have a huge capital gains, and you might be selling that stock or selling whatever it is you have the capital gains on, and you want to protect yourself from taxes, check out the interview with Robert or check out the website, defendersofcapitalism.com, which is Michael Williams's project and Michael Williams's website. I work with Michael on defendersofcapitalism.com. Check out the website. If you're in the Colorado area, check out Leadership Program, the Rockies, and Capitalism, the Capitalism program at the Leadership Program. And who did I miss? Oh, ARI. ARI is, of course, a sponsor of the show, and they are reminding you that they are holding a conference in Porto, Portugal, particularly for those Europeans out there that can get to it easily and relatively cheaply. Please come. If you're listening to Yaron Brook Show, you can get a 10% discount. It's 26YBS10, 26YBS10. You can find out more information about the conference. I'll be there. We can hang out. And there's lots of time for socializing, a lot of good content. Check it out at, what was it? AynRand.org/start here. AynRand.org/start here. All right, thank you for those of you responding to my ask. Paul, thank you for the sticker. 2 stickers. The Decay, thank you for the sticker, $20, very generous. Bonnie, thank you. Free Market Capital, thank you. Jimmy, thank you. Ryan, thank you. Greg, who else do we have? Raphael earlier, and First Principle. Yeah, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. You too can join in the fun of doing a sticker to support the show. And we've got stickers for 99 cents. We've got stickers for $5, $20, whole variety. Join us and value for value. Win-win. All right, Michael, if the Democrats gain supermajorities, will they learn from Trump's authoritarianism and start imposing their own ICE-type programs on millionaires and billionaires? Where does this end? Well, first, Democrats are not going to achieve a supermajority. I mean, they might gain the House and the Senate, but they're not going to get a supermajority. Now, if they get the House and Senate and White House in 2028, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that crazy to think that they would do an ICE-like thing. Every time one side uses government more through executive orders, then the next party, when they get into power, ramps it up from there. That's the new starting point. And that's why Republicans are so, do so much damage by abandoning what they call their principles so quickly and increasing government spending and doing more and more authoritarian things. And because it's bad in and of itself, and it's also bad because it'll be used by the Republicans' enemies to go after them. So no, this is only going to get worse. That's what makes this so horrific. Is it's only going to get worse unless the country can elect somebody who's more rational. But if you look at the lead candidates on the left and on the right, you don't exactly see rationality as a major feature. Ebenezer says Fed holds rates. Yeah, I mean it was expected that the Fed would not increase rates would not decrease rates today. People are more interested in what Powell will actually say in the press conference than they were in the actual rate movement. All right, Michael. Netanyahu gave a lot of credit to free markets. He said before he introduced market reforms, there were hardly any skyscrapers in Tel Aviv. Now there's a forest of them. Yeah, but he's lying. He's lying in the sense that he introduced free market programs when he was finance minister, but he's introduced none, zero, nada free market programs since he became prime minister, 15, 16 years ago. So the last 15, 16 years ago have been a complete waste in terms of moving towards greater economic liberty. As finance minister, he was very good. Very good. Very good. I complimented him when he was finance minister. But once he became prime minister, he sold out to the various statists, to the various pressure groups, to the various, special interest groups, so-called special interest groups. Now, the current Treasury Secretary or Economic Secretary in Israel, who is a religious nut, a messianic Jew who's terrible on a lot of issues, is actually not bad when it comes to the economy. And we're seeing some deregulation happen right now. Again, not driven by Netanyahu, driven by his finance minister. The breaking up of, not the breaking up, the establishment of competition to cartels that exist in Israel. So anyway, I wouldn't give Netanyahu the credit for the skyscrapers. And imagine how much richer Israel could be if he'd increased economic liberty. I mean, if you look at the Economic Freedom Index, Israel's not way up there. And it could be. There's no reason it can't. It should be up there. And Netanyahu had the opportunity to put it up there and was in political power long enough to put it up there. But he didn't. So he shouldn't get the credit. The skyscrapers are impressive. Israel is an incredibly impressive place, particularly if you were there 40 years ago and you come back now. Tel Aviv is unrecognizable. It's just unrecognizable in terms of the amount of wealth that's being created. But that's the tech sector. That's Israeli entrepreneurs. Netanyahu has little to do with it. Michael, why do you say that the reason people evade is because their mind scares them? Reason scares them. I would be far more afraid going through life, not, cultivating my mind. What about reason could possibly scare somebody? Well, you are now responsible for what is true, what is moral, what is good, what is right. People are afraid of that responsibility. Now, I think, you could challenge what the cause and effect is here, right? It could very well be that the reason they're afraid is because they don't use their reason. And then all they have is fear. And now they're afraid to relearn or to discover their reason because they don't want the responsibility for themselves. I think it feeds off of each other. It's a feeding mechanism. But if they're discouraged to use their mind, if when they're in school and they say something original, the teacher slaps them down, or their parents slap them when they ask too many why questions. There are a lot of kind of external causes. At the end of the day, the reason why people evade is because they choose to. And there is no why below that. Why do they choose not to use their mind? Because that's what they chose. There's no cause of that. There's no chain of things that happened before. That's what free will means. It means you get to choose. And people choose to shut their mind off. Yahil, did you see Ben Shapiro's comments on ICE and the shooting of Alex Pretty? If so, what do you think of his comments? No, I haven't seen him. I don't watch Ben Shapiro. If you want me to comment on something, send me a clip. So send me a clip by email, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, or text message on Twitter or something. But send me the video of the commentary, and then I'm happy to comment on it. But I don't have time to listen to Shapiro and to everybody else. There's just too much going on in the world and in life to be able to do that. So yeah, if you want me, send me the clip. I'll happy to do it. Michael, MAGA is crashing. Once the Democrats sweep the House and Senate, the Republican Party will restructure. I hope your optimism is justified. We will see. We will see. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced what's left to restructure and who's left and who are the leaders and who's going to rise up after this mess, particularly given that they're all quiet now. So who are the leaders of this new Republican Party, and how are they ever going to be forgiven for being quiet, as the Dispatch claims, while Trump is doing what he's doing? Michael, if Congress won't do anything to hamper Trump and the Supreme Court rules in favor of his tariffs, are we living in a dictatorship? Well, we're living very close. I don't know if we want to define it as that. If the Supreme Court refuses to ever rule against Trump, then certainly yes. But let's see when we actually cross that threshold. Certainly, we cross the threshold if he rejects the outcome of the election. Michael says, if you have money in California, still the nicest place to live in the country? Oh, in terms of nice, yes, no question. And again, you have to put up with a lot. You have to pay taxes, very high taxes. And you have to put up with regulations if you're a business owner. So it's a shitty place to own a business, and it's an awful place for tax perspective. But in terms of actual living and weather and atmosphere, certainly a place like Orange County, I don't think can be beat. Raising a family, yeah, it's great. Espen, in your view, can the United States now be regarded as a banana republic? No, not quite. I know it seems that way coming from Norway, but no, I don't think so. Let's see what the Supreme Court rules in the next few weeks. But no, I don't think we're quite a banana republic yet. Although we have a banana president. There's no question about that. Michael, is it illegal to be in public without an ID in case Fed wants to see your papers? Is the penalty death? No, it's not illegal, and no, the penalty's not death. So no, it's not illegal. You do not have to carry ID in the United States. If you drive, you have to carry a driver's license. But outside of that, if you're just going for a walk, you do not have to carry an ID. Colt says, here's a super chat. Sorry it's been a while. No problem. No problem. I appreciate you, Colt. Thank you. Stephen, let's see. Nowadays, I'm always listening to something on my phone and grateful for it. I reject calls to put it down and embrace boredom. Yet, I can recall Mr. Rogers saying silence was good for the soul. Thoughts? I mean, silence is sometimes good for the soul. I mean, it's good you can't introspect while you're listening to stuff. You can't really relax. Well, listening to music maybe. So it depends what you mean by listening. I mean, you can introspect and you can relax listening to music. I'm not sure silence is better than music. Depends on the music. Depends on the music, I guess. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I don't see a great value in silence. You're listening to good music, so you're fine. The Oceanist. I wonder if Mamdani and his supporters changed their mind on the warmth of collectivism, considering what we've seen in Minnesota. Well, I don't think they consider that collectivism, right? They don't consider what Trump is doing collectivism. They consider that fascism, or they consider that America centrism, America first, which sounds to them individualistic and selfish. So I doubt it. Mamdani is threatening again to raise taxes on New Yorkers significantly. He's got a $12 billion hole that he needs to raise taxes for. All right, guys, thank you. I appreciate you all being here, particularly the super chatters and the sticker. Thank you for the support. Thank you to all the people on Patreon and PayPal. I don't know when I'll see you next. I'll try to make it as soon as possible, but travel does get in the way, and I'm stacked with events. It's not just traveling; it's speaking and meeting and stuff like that. Thank you, Oceanist, for another sticker. Really appreciate it. Let's see what I want to tell you. Yeah, that's it. Don't forget Patreon, and I will see you all soon. Next few days. Bye. Oh, we got a question. Is that a question? Geekonomics says, "Thanks for the gold dollar discussion." Absolutely. Always happy to discuss economics. All right. Thank you, guys, and see you soon.